Am I seeing, okay, row 3, there's a lady who has her hand up, and I see one over there in the corner, over there, yes. Back-to-back, quick ones, please.
Hi. Hello, thank you. Litika Burke from the Nightly Australia. Just to follow up on the tough love, does the panel think that there are costs to the first year of that tough love approach?
Okay.
And what are they?
All right, thank you. And a question over there. Yes, please, go ahead.
The title of the panel's, I think, double trouble in trying to find the interconnectedness of these two theaters. And I think you could argue that there's no greater geographic manifestation of that than the Arctic. Curious about this panel's perspective on the collusion, to use your words, Undersecretary, between Russia and China around the Northern Sea Route, which is effectively bankrolling the Ukraine war, implicating European interests, but also their collusion militarily in and around the Bering Strait, which implicates U.S. interests and also Indo-Pacific. Thanks.
Any volunteers? So costs to tough love, I guess a non-American would have to take that one. And then Bridge, maybe I'll put you on the hook for that last question. Minister Van Weel, yes.
I'll do the European tough love.
Please.
Maybe one of the Indo-Pacifics can speak to that. I get a lot of questions from reporters today whether or not I'm relieved after the speech of Secretary Rubio.
Were you?
And I said no.
Okay.
But I've also not been that worried after the speech of Vice President Vance last year.
Huh.
And if you look at the messages in both, then they're actually the same.
Exactly.
And that message is that we need to take more care of our own security, and I couldn't agree more, and I think all of my European colleagues couldn't agree more. Now, the reaction that sometimes is put on top of that is that we can't rely on the US anymore. And I think that today's speech was probably easier accessible for people to hear that that's not the case. It wasn't the case in Vice President Vance's speech. It wasn't a goodbye to Europe. It was a wake-up call to Europe. I think we've woken up, great. Whether or not Europeans did that out of anger, disappointment, or motivation, it doesn't matter. But then let this speech help those that were angry to do it out of motivation as well. So tough love sometimes can help, and we do need a more equal relationship also in security.
That perfectly, yeah.
Okay. Deputy Prime Minister?
Yeah, but look, I speak from the point of view of, I guess, Australia's relationship with the United States. I don't think there's a cost. Burden sharing has been a part of the conversation between our two countries for a long time. You know, President Kennedy was talking to Prime Minister Menzies about this in the early 1960s, and and we understand it. And we, you know, in terms of how our relations have gone with the Trump administration since its inauguration, you know, we are really happy with the way in which we've been able to engage with the Trump administration, with how we are working together in terms of jointly giving rise to deterrence in the region. We are dramatically increasing our defence spend. That is what we should be doing, given the strategic circumstances that we face. And you know, and we are actually growing the American footprint on the Australian continent, which again I think is a very positive thing in terms of how we are working together to help promote peace within the Indo-Pacific. So none of it I would put within the language of cost.
Can I?
Sure, very quick last comments here.
Great. So why should the US taxpayer pay for our security if we're not prepared to pay for some ourselves? Huh? It's fair, isn't it? So actually the cost is that we grow up a bit more and we stop just taking other people for granted, and that we have a bit more pride in ourselves and what we can do working together. So actually I find, like my friend Richard does, that we have a very good relationship with the US administration, that we can be very direct, because they're very direct, and I love that, they're very direct. And we know where we are, which is we will have to step up. So I think sometimes the cost of that tough love is we grow up a bit more. And I'd say that to Taiwan too. Everyone has to.
You know, we're out of time, but I have to say at this point, I mean, part of the reason why this question keeps coming up is earlier when Bridge and I were speaking one-on-one, I didn't get a clear yes or no answer on Article 5. And the question, the cost, then would be, were the United States to invoke Article 5 again 5 years from now, would other countries follow the call?
Well, we're not part of NATO.
I know New Zealand isn't, but
we
it's the general
have in the
question.
past. We were in Afghanistan.
Yes.
We're in Iraq.
Would you
We're
do it again?
in all these other
Would
places.
you do it again?
We've, like with Australia, we've never let them do it. Vietnam.
I mean, Bridge was not going to engage in speculation, and I'm not going to do that either in terms of what may or may not happen in the future. But I think we have been side by side with America in respect of every conflict in which it has fought over the last century. So, I mean, we look to our history in terms of informing how we move forward, and you know, our relation. I very much feel that our alliance with the United States is as significant today as it's ever been. I mean, we are building very much relationships with other middle powers within the region, and that's a critically important thing to do, and I could speak at length about that, and we don't have that time. But to be clear, I mean, there's nothing which replaces American power in the Indo-Pacific, and it is greatly the alliance that we have with the United States is fundamentally important to us.
Okay, very quick final word from Minister Motegi, and then Bridge, I'll let you have the last word.
The ability to respond and to enhance deterrence, is that considered a cost or not? If there's a war, if there's a dispute, a larger cost must be paid. And from that perspective, to deter, the purpose is to deter. That is what I think. And deterrence and response capability, if this is enhanced, it may be possible to resolve problems peacefully. We were discussing about Taiwan.
On the part of Japan, the Taiwan issue, we expect it would be resolved by Taiwan. That's our consistent position. After the war, we have consistently tread the path of a peace-loving nation. And going forward, international peace and stability is something that we'd like to contribute toward. And this morning, China's participant mentioned Japan's security assurance, and that intervention was not based on fact at all. That is what is on my mind. To prevent disputes before it occurs, how to do the burden sharing is something that we have to work out in advance, and I think it's important that we do so.
Thank you very much. I'm going to let you have the last word to close this out.
I'm honored. Last but least, for sure, in this category, honored to be on with this panel. And I think, honestly, I associate myself 100% with everything everybody said, because I think it really, of course, there are costs. There's costs in everything. But there's a lot of discussion of history here. I think if we look over the scope of the last 100 years, both the lead up to the Second World War and then the avoidance of that with no Third World War, the answer is always it's better to have the difficult conversations about, as Japanese Foreign Minister Motegi just said, to have the difficult conversations and make sure that things are fair and square, as Mr. Collins just said, Mr. Marles is Deputy Prime Minister Marles. In a sense, that is the purpose of leadership in our context under President Trump. I mean, here, Secretary General Rutte, all of your leaders, et cetera, is to pay those lesser costs now. And I think we should be grateful. I think I agree with the Secretary General that we're doing that now. So we're in a position, as the Foreign Minister just said, to be operating from a position of peace. So that's, again, why I feel that we can leave this conference. And I think, Mr. Minister, you're exactly right to say Vice President Vance's and Secretary Rubio's, there's a constant theme, and at a lesser level, obviously, my comments, to say there's a trajectory here, but there's also a path. We need to take more responsibility. We want growing allies. We want strong allies. Now it's time to march out and say and work together in a pragmatic, results-oriented way to come up with alliances that make sense for everybody, that will work. And to your point, Ravi, I mean, I'm certainly not a head of state. I don't think anybody else here is a head of state. It's idle speculation. It's inappropriate speculation. The best thing that people like us can offer is ready forces and societies that have priced in that readiness, that are spending, that have militaries that are ready, that are speaking, you know, softly but clearly, but carrying that big stick. That's the best thing to offer. If I were in the market, that's what I would want. I'd want that a lot more than idle kind of abstractions that are disconnected from reality.
I'm still going to have to ask the questions. Diplomatic panel, ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, Ministers Collins, Motegi, Van Weel and Elbridge Colby. Thank you.